begin by something that we all can agree on, and that is the way to the hearts of our students is really connecting them to their education and their career goal. And that's the most important thing that we can do. How do we help adult ed students go farther faster? Well, there's lots of different ways. Things that we've talked about, the career pathways, aligning things with the credit programs in our post-secondary programs, including the instruction and the standards. We worked so hard on our college and career readiness standards, and we're working through, we did the language arts, we've done the math now, so we're really trying to move that forward. Expanding our credit opportunities, that works as well. And then again, we've already talked about the comprehensive service menu. When we select our plays to make the career pathways progress, what happens? We start with those competencies. We work with our business partners. What do they need? Mark's group talked about, they go out, they find out what the communities need, they move forward. Where does integrated educational opportunities fit in? It fits in with the course content. Zelda went over this, you've all gone through this. WIOA legislation, again, core programs, filter down to the new title, integrated activities and education are the #1 thing there under Title II activities. And part of that we know is WIOA's definition of what integrated education is, and those are listed there. Contextually and concurrently. So we've talked a little bit about that, again through the contextualized curriculum, but we're going to take it a step further and also targeting those students to match up with their career goals. One thing that a lot of the research is saying now too is that we've put so much emphasis on the standards. We're really working to increase what we expect from our adult education students, that sometimes what loses out are our intake procedures. And probably the most important thing to adult ed students is the very first time they walk through your door. How they are welcomed, what their first thing is that they're going to do. And I know a lot of times we're so concerned with assessing them to try to find out what the most important placement is, we forget they're humans. We forget that for some of these people, this was extremely difficult just to walk in the door, and the very first thing we tell them is that you need to go take a test. And we wonder why they don't come back to us. So again, it's real important that we think and don't forget about that intake procedure. You have seen this probably for 3 or 4 years now. It is a major form that was done and presented through federal and state educational agencies. Again, it just gives you a side-by-side comparison about the contextualization, the differences, but also the similarities. The contextualized basic skills on the left, again, most of the time the ABE, GED, ESOL instructor, working with those versus the integrated. In most states, again, we're talking about within, in that case, the CTE classroom. And we say CTE, again, we were just talking about it at our table. In Florida, those of us who in our own adult ed departments are associated with career and technical education departments, we refer to CTE, but some of us think of CTE as a K-12 program, and it's really not. It's career and tech. It encompasses everything. In Florida, those of you who are scheduling and discussing issues with post-secondary students, you'll hear a PSAV, or post-secondary adult vocational. So in this presentation and a lot of your national literature, most of them just refer to it as CTE. That in no means is referring to K-12, it's the whole encompassed amount. Taking integrated instruction, you can scroll it down a little bit more and look at the division between the instructor collaboration and the lesson plan integration. Under the instructor collaboration, what are they actually doing? They can either do team teaching, where they're in the same classroom together, or they're collaborating, they're deciding what's going to be taught, but the CTE instructor is teaching in his or her class, and the ABE, GED, ESOL teacher is teaching in that person's class, but they are planning together, they're looking at curriculum, they're talking, they're going to professional development activities together, but they are separate, but could be paired. And again, the lesson plan integration, Mark's group, excellent. Again, we're talking about what is evident in both of those courses, what can we do? We want those outcomes to reflect both. And again, here you go. Here's what we're talking about, team teaching today. Team teaching falls under the first one, where the actual definition, the adult basic skills course content is integrated into a post-secondary career and tech course, team teaching. The other one is there for you to look at. That's when the students are going to separate classes. Couldn't go any further without mentioning IPDAE. There are so many resources. You just have to scroll down. If you go into the Institute, you go into the presentation, there are direct hot links that will take you right to unbelievable resources, lesson plans, plans on how you do things, sample forms. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. Why? We don't have time to do that. You can take some of these resources and morph them to what you need. Here's what happened at the end of last year. We went from a FAECP for career pathways, and DOE rolled out our new FICAPS. Zelda went through this again. The highlighted ones are the things that are required. They are in part of the FICAPS grant application and also expectations for what we do. Today's focus, team teaching. The things that were listed in the grant application and that were reviewed this morning, the co-instructors in the grant application had 50% overlap, but we don't want to occupy a lot of time talking about a mandatory overlap. The issue is working together, collaboration. Whether it's 10%, 50%, 100%, it's going to happen at different times. Florida is right now, we are on the ground floor. We're working with the recipients of last year's RFP. We're learning from them, not only about successes and failures, but about timelines, about percentages, comparing programs where CTE and adult ed instructors are 100% working together, but also recipients who are trying things where they're simply doing contextualization. But it's important for you to remember, when we talk about some of the things we talked about in the last session with funding, and where do you get the money to do these things, and do you rely on local resources? Please remember, there is nothing in stone in Florida right now. All of our leaders are taking the information from what's going on out in the field. They're working with our data department. They're working with how to input the data, what's going to be the funding for that. That is yet to come. And tomorrow's session will give you a lot of the latest information about funding and about your data and how to input the registrations and the enrollment of these students. Again, the importance here is the design and deliver that they're both in a collaborative relationship. Their outcomes and assessments are both done together, and that both instructors are present in the classroom, but the last one is the most important thing. You cannot force anyone to do team teaching. You cannot, you can ask a teacher, you better make sure they are really excited. You cannot force someone to do team teaching and expect it to be successful. So what are we looking in team teacher qualities? Everybody in this room could list, and we could sit here and list qualities. You have somebody you're thinking of, you've worked with, but these are the main things that seem to come up over and over and over again in every piece of literature you look at that's been published, whether it's on team teaching, co-teaching, or really having to do with the new WIOA legislation and integrated education. Number one, of course, as you can imagine, the thing that continually comes up as the most important thing is open and ongoing communication. Because if you have people who are not willing or don't know how to communicate effectively, it's not going to move forward. Mutual respect, appreciation, a positive attitude, I think we all can know that. The work ethic has to be pretty much the same. You have to be flexible. The next one, really interesting, confidence in your subject matter. And confidence in knowledge and also the abilities to teach in front of a peer. I don't know about you, but you know, it's so much harder when you have someone else in the room. Maybe we've all gone through this when we had people coming in to observe us. When it's your classroom and you can shut that door and you do what you want, it's one thing. But when you're working together or you have somebody else in the classroom, you're really thinking about what you're doing. The person has to be willing to do that. You have to be creative. You have to be willing to explore new things. Next one, also very important that I hadn't really, you have to be able, the ability to recognize when and how. So just because you have this toolkit or you have a bag of wonderful activities that you think need to be done, the strength of the team comes with learning when and how you're going to infuse a new activity or an alternative activity to get to those two students that continually are off task over here, even though they're 30, 40 years old. They're not getting it. So that's a main thing. And again, the dedication to and the focus on short and long-term student success. We started every single session with, why are we here? We're here for the students. We're here to improve the success rate. In the last, I would say, series of articles that I read, the last bullet point continued to stand out to me. Especially the adult students who don't feel so comfortable with their academic abilities. They felt that that was one thing that sometimes was lacking when teachers got together in a team teaching situation. Why and how now do you get going? So you've decided you're going to try it, whether you're a FICAPS recipient or not. Everybody's going to do it. We're going to try some kind of team teaching, integrated instruction, contextualization, whatever silo you want to pick, you're going to try something. How do you go back to your sites? What's some good advice you can give people? First step, building rapport. However you decide to build rapport, learning and getting to know people both personally and on a professional level, building trust, sharing. What's most important about sharing? The positive things, not necessarily the negative things, and that's real important. Clarifying roles, responsibilities, and lesson assignments. If you don't clarify what you expect, you're not going to get it. If we don't have a map of where we're going, how are we ever going to get there? Respect, that's respect for people's differences as well as your similarities. Positive attitude comes out again. Vary responsibilities and roles. If one teacher continually takes the leadership role, the students absolutely recognize that. And all of a sudden, and most of the time, it is the adult education instructor, whether it's ABE, GED, or ESOL instructor, that takes that back seat. Because if you're doing true team teaching, the traditional team teaching in a career and tech classroom, well, of course that career and tech teacher is going to immediately be put in a leadership role. It's their classroom, it's their content, majority of it, it's their materials. They've been teaching that course for a while, they're in that department. It forces that adult ed teacher into a role that now we have to work with and get them out of just sitting in the back of the room and watching. So that's one of the things that's really, really important. Students need to see both teachers in an equal and equitable role, and that's a leadership role, and it doesn't happen overnight. Different teaching models. If you're always, as the ABE, GED, ESOL teacher, in the back of the room, if you're always the one who is circulating through the classroom, if you're always the one who is at the board making notes, if you're always the one who's running out at the other teacher's request to make copies. These are adult students. It doesn't take them 5 seconds to, in their mind, put that teacher in a lesser role. And that's what you're trying to do here. And that's where the communication comes in, with really talking through those issues. Very important. When you teach a lesson, sometimes they don't work out the way you planned them to. You can have all the wonderful things, you can have activities, you can have props, you can do a lot of planning, and you go in there and it's a dud. Okay? And a lot of times when team teachers work together, if one has taken the leadership role in planning that activity and it's a failure or a dud, the other teachers, sometimes it's easy to say, well, that was a flop. Okay? Again, trying to get to yourself, it's a reaction we do, but realizing everything that comes out of your mouth now is going to be really reflected to that other teacher. So it's taking a look at yourself and really looking inward to how you react to things. How many of you really sit and talk about your teaching philosophy with other people, your management style, your preferences? We really don't spend a lot of time doing that, but those are some of the things we're talking about that will make or break a team teaching situation. Recognize your strengths and forgive weaknesses. We don't forgive each other as much as we should. A protocol for planning sessions, really important. Sometimes we talk, we meet in the hall. You know how it is, you get busy. I'll talk to you on the phone as I'm going home, okay? That's what we do now. We do snippets, okay? And I think what this is saying is that it's important to agree on the structure, rely on preparation, not spontaneity. Don't just, by the seat of your pants, decide what you're going to do tomorrow. There really needs to be a structure and a plan. And capitalize on each other's strengths. Going along with writing things down and planning, the time to reflect and check in. So it's not just time for planning, but it's time for going back and taking a look at each session, not as a whole, but everything you do. Share and listen. And the one that I like a lot, if you can infuse laughter and you can learn to laugh at yourself, you will get a lot further. And you will ease those relationships. The next one probably, and it's probably the most difficult thing to deal with, and that's when you do have a difficult situation. And let's face it, team teaching is not an easy task. Things are going to happen. There could be times when there are going to be some real conflicts. Teachers, you need to go back. You need to talk to your administrative staff about that. Work out a process for dealing with difficult situations. Don't put your head in the sand. They're going to happen. It's better to be prepared as you move forward. Resolving differences, again, start this conversation with what can we do? Remember, we're in this for the student. Our goal is student achievement. This is not my achievement. Okay? Equalize responsibilities. That's another one that's very important. If one person is constantly the one who feels responsible for everything, you're going to run into difficulties. And people have to understand you've got to give a little to get a little. Finally, on this topic, there are going to be times when it's just not going to work with the 2 people or 3, if you have even a bigger group, that you've chosen. And I think the biggest thing here is for both the team teachers and the administrators to be able to recognize when it's not working and take action. That's easier said than done, but again, the students will know it. You can try to cover it up, but if it's not working in a team teaching situation, your students are going to suffer. You need to cut your losses, talk about it, and hopefully take care of it. Sometimes it's just not the best model. It's just not working at that time. It doesn't mean that 6 months down the road it might not be a great thing with another couple of teachers, but right now it's not working. Pacing guide. It's very unusual that an adult education instructor is going to 100% go in and be able to take over or be a 100% team teacher in that classroom. It's real important, again, up front. All of these things are up front. It's not a good idea to do a pacing guide 6 months in, but up front, it's a really good conversation to have, especially between a CTE teacher and an adult ed teacher. When are we planning? Are we talking about 6 months? Are we talking about 6 weeks? When do you see me? This is difficult curriculum. I need to learn this curriculum. All of you know that we go through stages, and Tuckman's stages of team development has been around since 1965, and it's still one of the most well-respected descriptions of teaming, of teams, and why it is important for any person who is entering a team relationship to understand that you're going to go through stages. These are the stages, according to him: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. According to Tuckman, this is what happens. The first stage, forming, and you can read there what it says. But this is the question stage. Like, what am I doing here? You know, what are we going to do? What am I going to get out of this? So there's a lot of things going on there, but you're still being very polite. You're still in that, they described it as speed dating. Okay, you're getting into a marriage situation, but you're in a speed dating situation. The second stage is storming, and this can come, it depends on each person. The storming stage, you're testing each other. This is called the me stage. So it's all about me. All of a sudden you're feeling comfortable with each other, so now you're going to criticize. Now you're going to bring up things. Now you're going to talk about conflicts, maybe. So it's important to know that you're concerned with me. The norming stage, you're starting to get to that point where you have mutual acceptance for each other and trust and cohesion. The performing stage is where we're all headed. Okay? This is where you are absolutely on. Both teachers, it's gone from independent instruction and independent thinking to interdependent. We now have gone from what am I doing to what are we doing? What am I going to accomplish to what are we going to accomplish and be successful with the students? And in 77, Tuckman added an additional one, which is stage 5, which is adjourning. As your team goes through these stages, there could be opportunities, and I would say in the adult ed world, this is probably happening a lot, where staff changes. You get a great program going, and there's turnover in staff, and you have to pull in somebody, and you know how that goes. So whenever a team disbands, for whether or not it's a teacher leaving, or, as we also know, a lot of times grant funds run out and we haven't done what we should have done and made those sustainability issues come to the forefront, and we do not have the funding to do this, and we disband it. So again, those 5 stages are real important. So one thing I wanted to say about expanded team teaching models. Last year, again on the IPDAE website and through the Illinois group, they went through and did a long presentation on what kind of models are out there when you enter into a team teaching relationship. They're all listed there. The ones that I have looked at now have been expanded to include I think more alternative ways of dealing with our students. Just the traditional ones don't always work as well. And adult education teachers who have been dealing with team teaching situations now for several years and have been willing to share their strengths and their successes have suggested that we add to the list that was given last year. The traditional team teaching, we've gone through that. That's the height. That is working totally together, planning, instructing, assessing, evaluating, moving forward. Collaborative is one, again, that our Illinois group who presented last year made a big point about. Collaborative teaching, not just that the CTE teacher is teaching carburetors and I'm going to teach something else, but there's a topic that both people can get passionate about and talk about. And it doesn't matter who suggests that they team teach, but the students are sitting there observing this. The teachers are modeling what good interaction is. They have so many opportunities today on television and on video and to watch what inappropriate communication is with a team member. It's out there all over the place, that they need to see what positive to adult role models can do with a very challenging topic. You can have different viewpoints. They need to see you. They need to see the adult educator, the CTE instructor collaborating and be able to communicate on that. Parallel, again, same instruction, same topic, same content, one does, one does. Station teaching, those of you who have been around forever, cooperative learning, okay? I might take websites, next person's gonna take text material. Students start with me, move over here. Differentiated split class, here's where you're getting into some real help for the students who need additional learning. But don't forget the adult students in a particular lesson who might have been pulled aside or might have needed additional instruction on one topic could be the group that needs enhanced instruction on the next topic. That's different. That's different. The alternative, again, looking at adult students, looking at their learning styles, not making every single lesson dependent on one learning style. This is the one that you will see over and over and over again. There are more videos online that demonstrate monitoring one teach, one assist than any other model. Again, it's what we talked about a little bit earlier. One person is responsible for the content, the other one is assisting. And then this one, not used so much, but could be used, but just make sure that it is voluntary. Unless you really want to cause some issues. There are some times when teachers, they're just not feeling comfortable with the way they're teaching, and they'd like their team teacher to sit and watch them and give them feedback. It can help, but it needs to be voluntary. Complementary and supportive, again, we're talking about working together and coming up. One does the primary responsibility, but the other teacher might say, you know what, if you can teach this lesson, I've got some additional things I'm going to come up with, worksheets, whatever, or whatever it is that's going to complement it. We're not going to go through these because they're in your book. Their benefits, these happen to be student. You know what the main student benefit, it's engagement, it's success. Teacher benefits, they're there as well for you to look at. There's so many, and you can add your own. I think one of the most important things for the teacher benefits, because it's a lot of hard work, boy, does it make you focus on your standards. It really makes both teachers take a look at the content for the course they are teaching. The other thing it does is it really highlights that you need pre-training and you need ongoing, and you need to learn how to network and share. Challenges, they're there. There are a lot of them. I guess the most important thing that we can say today is stay tuned for tomorrow. We're going to hear from our DOE staff again about how we can follow their rules and input our students in the enrollment. Funding is an issue. We need to talk about that. Administrators, you need to really, really understand that teachers are looking to you for support, and that support goes in a lot of different ways. We've talked about a lot of these.